Welcome. I am your moderator for this evening. My name is C.L. Fenari. I am both a GardenCom member and a National Garden Bureau member, and proud to be part of both of those organizations. I am also the host of The Garden Lady, which is streamed online and heard on WCAI radio. And I am the author of books as well. And I am so pleased to be here moderating this because we have such a great lineup of books and authors for you all. So Shelley, why don't you give people the official welcome?
I'm glad to join you, CL, and welcoming everyone. Welcome to our GardenCom Authors Talk About Gardening party. We're glad you're joining us tonight. It's going to be great gardening fun because where gardeners gather, it's always fun. My name is Shelley Cram, and I'm a director of Garden Communicators International, commonly referred to as GardenCom. And GardenCom is very proud to partner with the National Garden Bureau to introduce you to some amazing garden writers who belong to both of our organizations. So GardenCom members are professionals in the green industry world, and we speak to home gardeners and those in the green industry through a variety of media, such as written articles, of course, the classic old school newspaper column, all the way to YouTube videos, speaker roles at garden clubs, radio, and much, much more. Wherever you can read or write about gardening, you will find a GardenCom writer. So I'm going to turn this back over to our co-sponsor, Diane Blazek with National Garden Bureau.
Thank you so much, Shelley. You're right. We are very excited to have this, to host this tonight. As Shelley said, I'm Diane. I'm with National Garden Bureau. We are a 105-year-old organization. I just realized I wore my 100th anniversary vest tonight, which happened 5 years ago during COVID. Not the best time to celebrate 100 years, but no matter, we have been spending the last 105 years educating and inspiring anybody and everybody for their garden. We want to give them good information like the ones you're going to get tonight, and a lot of inspiration through our website. So with that, now I'm going to turn it back over to CL so we can really get this fun started.
All right. Well, it is fun because right now I would like the authors to introduce themselves. And we will start with Ellen Zachos.
Lucky me. Thank you, CL. Thank you, Diane, and the whole National Gardening Bureau for inviting me. I would like to tell you that I'm speaking to you from Athens, Greece, but it's really just a photograph. I am in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where I'm betting that I have the smallest and driest garden of the four authors here tonight. I moved here from New York City, where I ran my own design, build, maintenance company on rooftop gardens for about 20 years. While I lived there, I also taught at the New York Botanic Garden for about a decade and was the coordinator for the gardening department and continuing ed there. I'm a Harvard graduate. My first career was on Broadway, and I've published 11 books. I'm best known for my work with edible plants, but tonight I'm here to celebrate my latest book, Mythic Plants, Potions and Poisons from the Gardens of the Gods, which is about plants in Greek mythology. And thank you all for coming.
Thank you so much, Ellen. Jana, would you please introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you, CL, and welcome everyone. It's great to be here. I'm a garden designer, speaker, and author in Massachusetts, about 20 miles west of Boston. And I really love to combine horticulture, design, and travel tips to basically inspire and educate both new and seasoned gardeners. I love to visit gardens and historic sites, both in the US and abroad, and share them through my books, my blog, and my photos. I've written 4 garden travel guides to the eastern part of the country. And I also organize garden tours for travelers. And I'm a landscape designer, and my business is Enchanted Gardens in Metro West Boston.
Thank you so much. Ryan, you're up.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm so excited to be here among such good friends. I am based in the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul. I come from a long line of horticulturists. I am the fifth generation family member at my family's business. We're a wholesale grower of shrubs and trees and perennials, but my career did not start in horticulture. I was not trained that way at first. Like Ellen, I worked in the entertainment industry for the first part of my career. And then, like a good Midwesterner, I came home and I've been back in Minnesota for about a dozen years now and started working on social media at the family business and now oversee the marketing communications for Bailey's, our family or our business. But we also own three consumer brands: Endless Summer Hydrangeas, First Edition Shrubs and Trees, and Easy Elegance Roses. So I get to work both with the industry and with home gardeners. And I'm very fortunate to serve as the spokesperson for our brands. So I get to travel all around the country and around the world giving talks, and more importantly, selfishly for me, hearing from home gardeners and their questions so that we can help them have success. Um, Along with that, I'm a garden designer and author, and really learn a lot from those travels and from conversations like these. So I'm really grateful to be here. Thank you.
Wonderful. Teresa, you can wrap it up for us in terms of the introductions.
Sure. I'm here in Ohio, and a big welcome to you all. I send out a big thanks to the National Garden Bureau and GardenCom for hosting us tonight. I'm excited to be a part of this conversation. I'm an author and a garden writer. I write books for Timber Press. My newest is Garden to the Max, which I'm excited to share with you a bit about tonight. I also co-authored American Roots, and I have two more books in the works with Timber Press. So more to come on that. I am the contributing garden editor at Midwest Living, and I also write for Better Homes and Gardens. Like the book that I wrote, Garden to the Max, I'm a bit of a maximalist at heart. I love to try lots of different plants and lots of different garden styles on my 2 acres outside of Columbus, Ohio. And I even max out my clothes. I love floral prints, floral wallpaper, and my mom's floral quilts everywhere. So truly a maximalist at heart, and excited to be here tonight.
Thank you so much. Now, let me just say a quick word for those of you who have just joined us. First of all, open the chat, because there will be links put in the chat that you will want to pay attention to. And later I will explain to you all how to save the chat so that you can have all those links saved. All right, that'll come later. Secondly, at some point, you will have the option to go into a breakout room with one of the other, with one or two, I mean, you can go back and forth to a breakout room with the authors so that you can ask them questions, hear a little bit more about something that you want explained. And that's going to happen. And throughout the whole evening, we will be giving away books. Each of the author's book will be given away during the course of the evening, and you have to be present to win. So stay tuned for that. We're going to get started with a few questions that we want our authors to answer. And the first question is, what compelled you to write your book? And start out by reminding people the name, the title of your book, and then say what compelled you to write it. And we'll start that off with Teresa.
Sure. What inspired me to write Garden to the Max was really all of the magazine articles that I'd written. And it was the ones with the craziest personalities and the boldest styles that inspired me to go home and try some of these great ideas in my own backyard. Like the time I returned home to cloud prune my own boxwood after visiting Pearl Fryer's topiary masterpiece in Bishopville, South Carolina. And so I also found that in addition to this over-the-top style of gardens, maximalist style was having a moment in the fashion and interior design worlds. And I thought, what if we kind of combine those two? And even in gardens, people were embracing this more style of abundance instead of these overly controlled minimalist landscapes. People were really leaning into these layered, personality-packed gardens. And that's what we wanted to showcase in this book. So I worked together with Bob Stefko, a talented photographer who captured the essence of these maximalist spirited gardens. And we're super excited with the result.
Wonderful. Jana,
Hey,
how
hi.
you about your book?
Sure. So my book is The Garden Tourist's Mid-Atlantic. And this is actually the fourth book in a series of garden travel guides. I began gardening when I was 30, and no one in my family had gardens, so I was kind of fresh to gardening by myself. And I really found that by visiting public gardens as well as private gardens, I could learn a lot about plants, about how to garden, about design techniques. And I feel like we're really blessed with a wonderful array of gardens here on the East Coast. And I really wanted to share them with others, whether they garden or they just enjoy visiting beautiful places.
Thank you. Ryan, you're up next.
Well, so my book, Field Guide to Outside Style, happened like so many things in my life where it was a bit of a happy accident. As I mentioned, I grew up around this, but when I worked at the nursery growing up, it was in the field spacing plants, and I didn't understand the impact of the work that we were doing. And so when I came back to the nursery and really started digging in and had really great teachers like Dr. Michael Durr and Dr. David Zlezak and really started to understand plants. I'm a artist at heart, and so I loved the idea of how you pair plants. And so I started doing design and helping a lot of friends and family members that had no idea where to start, did not consider themselves gardeners, and started making really easy to maintain landscapes that had a lot of beauty and power to them. And so I was just having this conversation with a good friend of a lot of ours from GardenCom, Jessica Walliser, and she had just gone in-house at the publisher as the acquisitions editor and said, "That's a great book. Why don't you write it?" And I said, "No, I don't know if I should do that. I've never been an author. I wrote a lot, but never been an author before." And she said, "Let's do it." And so I said yes. At the same time that I started a new job at the nursery, went from an individual contributor to all of a sudden having 9 direct reports, got married, and bought a house all in the same year that I wrote the book. So it was a happy accident, but it was a really fun and amazing experience. And like Teresa, got to collaborate with a photographer, a friend of mine, Tracy Walsh, who's another amazing garden photographer and does a lot with both BHG and Midwest Living. And so it was a really amazing experience, but in the midst of a lot of craziness, this was some of the calm that I got to think about design.
Very good. Ellen, what inspired you to write Mythic Plants?
I have always felt like I had a special relationship with Greek mythology because I'm half Greek. And I'm sure that I'm just kidding myself about that, but I have always been fascinated by it. I love the stories. And I thought, oh, as I became a plant person, I started to realize how many plants appeared in these myths and in this ancient Greek literature and played really important roles. So I put together a talk on the subject. And I got to confess, it was not one of my most popular talks, but I did give it at Cornell University. And after that, people were like, "Do you have a book on this? We'd love to know more." And I had to say no, and I hate saying no. And then the pandemic hit. And so many of my speaking gigs were canceled that I thought, okay, now I have time to write this book. And if you don't do it now, Ellen, somebody else will. And then you'll be really mad and mad at yourself. And no one likes to be mad at themselves. So that was my motivation.
Wonderful. I think that those attending might like to know what zone you are all in, and what you're planning to do maybe next in your garden so that they get to know you a little better. Let's go there and start out with Jana.
Okay. Well, I'm in Zone 6 in Massachusetts, and I always have many projects that come into my head, especially over the winter months, but one of the projects that I'd like to tackle this year is to create kind of a sun gold garden. This is something that I have seen in gardens in England as well as in private gardens in the US. And it's really a garden that is planted with a lot of gold foliage plants as well as flowers that have really bright hot colors. So I already have some of that in place, but I really want to take it to the next level and really kind of expand my flower bed and add a lot of gold-leafed perennials like gold heart, bleeding heart, golden oregano, gold cannas, and Hakone grass, and then surround them with gold leaf shrubs and conifers. And I have found that especially on gray days, when you look at a gold garden like that, you feel like you're walking into sunshine. And here in New England, we kind of need some of that. So that's my plan.
That's a nice thought, walking into sunshine. I like that. Ryan, where do you live and what's next?
So in Minnesota, we experienced, like probably many of you, a shift in zones as the USDA updated their map a couple of years ago. So I was zone 4, now technically zone 5, but we still garden with mostly zone 4 plants and maybe cheat a little bit and see what survives. We did get a Vitex to survive for 3 years in Minnesota and
Wow.
flowers. So we're playing with some stuff and pushing some zones because um, I don't like to follow rules very well, and so we play. So I'm moving from my husband and I bought this house. This will be our 4th season. So I'm moving from doing the really important foundational things. We did siding last year, so I built this gigantic 40-foot by 4-foot container and box in front of the house and planted that. So while we were doing the siding thing, we still had something pretty up front. So we're moving from that to now some more functional things this year, like this treacherous hillside out my back that my husband doesn't like to mow. And so we're going to make it much more beautiful and functional. And then we have a spot in the back corner of the yard that was all trees. And for those of you that live in snowy areas, you understand the late season, really heavy, wet snow. Well, we had that a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, and took a bunch of trees down. So I have a full shade area that is now full sun. So that's the project for this year. We got it all cleared out. Everything got prepped last fall. And this spring we get to plant. So it's really exciting.
Nice.
On to the fun stuff. On to the fun stuff. So, Ellen, what zone are you in and what's next in your garden?
Well, I'm also in zone 6, but a very different zone 6 from Massachusetts since I'm at 7,000 feet in the high desert. Very, very dry. We get 14 inches of rain a year if we're lucky, and we're not lucky right now. So my next step is getting the irrigation up and running. They're coming on Tuesday morning, and I'm very happy about that. Couldn't do it any earlier because even though it's in the 70s today, we got snow on Saturday. Welcome to spring in the Rocky Mountains.
Wonderful. All right. Teresa, what's next?
Sure. I'm in zone 6 in central Ohio, and the daffodils are putting on a show right now, and some of the flowering trees are starting to bloom. We did have temperatures in the 20s this week, so it did zap a few things, but most things are pretty resilient. I'm trying some new things from some of the gardens that I was inspired by in Garden to the Max. And so I'm really inspired by this one gardener who planted a lot of things by seed. And so I'm going to add some foxglove, tassel flowers, and some feverfew in my own garden this year, planting all of those by seed. We recently added a water feature too, so that opens up a whole new palette of plants, and I'm excited to try some of those new plants, including water lilies. So
wonderful, wonderful. Well, I think it's time to give away a book. And Ryan, perhaps you could hold up your book. We are giving away a copy of Ryan's book. And Diane, why don't you tell people, first of all, what to do if they win, and then announce the winner?
I'm happy to do so. So in your chat, you see a little blue box. I don't know if right now it says everyone, but you want to go in, find my name, says Diane, private message me your mailing address, unless you want everybody on this meeting to know your mailing address. I don't think you do, but private message me your mailing address. And then as soon as this meeting is over, I will share it with the authors and they will be the ones to send the books out to you. So with that, I get to draw a name from my little hat here. And for Ryan's book, the name is Sharon DiCarlo. Sharon DiCarlo, congratulations. You won a copy of Ryan's book. So message me your address and we will get that book out to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We have, for those of you who have recently joined us, we have 3 more books to give away, and you have to be present to win. So stay with us. And let me just remind you that a little bit later, after we go through a few more questions, we'll go into breakout rooms, and you can go into a room with an author and ask questions. You can unmute yourself and ask questions, and or hear a little bit more from them about how they work or their book. So the next question that I want people to hear about is, who is the intended audience for your book? And, that's not always everybody. So let's hear about that. And Ryan, if you could start us off with that.
Sure. So when I started this book, I really thought about it as a book for me 10 years ago when I came back, or 12 years ago now when I came back into the business, that really knew nothing. So new gardeners, non-gardeners, people that like this stuff, but may not consider themselves a gardener, and giving just an easy place to start, because I think that's the biggest hurdle for someone that's just starting. And so that's where it came from, and helping someone understand, like, what do they really like, and what can they take on? What do they want to take on, both from a time standpoint, how many resources they want to put into it. But as the book went on, we found that it wasn't just for a new gardener, that those that had more experience found new plant combinations or new ways of thinking about things. So that broadens it a little bit. But really, at the core of it, what was near and dear to my heart were helping people get started. And so those that are more avid gardeners have found some tidbits, but then love to give it to their friends and family that are just getting started.
Terrific. Thank you. Ellen, who is your intended audience?
Well, I mean, everybody likes a good story, right? I remember saying to my mother, tell me a story. It was always what I wanted her to do. And this book is full of good stories. So if you like a good story, I hope you'll like my book. If you are interested in plant lore, how plants have been used through history, if you are a Greek mythology buff, if you're interested in ancient Greece in a broader way, and I said this to somebody recently, I think that somebody needs to organize a tour, a plant tour of Greece, not a garden tour, but a tour where you go to like the Oracle at Delphi and the Temple at Sunion, and you go to all these places and you hear about the stories of the plants that were famous in those places and that were used. And then we see all the really cool endemic plants that are still in Greece today. So it's a dream. Someday.
Sounds good. Sounds like a great idea. All right, Teresa, who's the intended audience for your book?
The intended audience for my book, kind of as the title Garden to the Max shares, is for the gardener who just can't resist one more plant. And so this book really leans into the maximalist style, and it might be for personal expression or maybe for more of a purpose, whether you're planting for abundance, for more biodiversity, or for reducing your carbon footprint. And then on the other side, I would love to attract some non-gardeners with this book, people that love maximalist style and that want to bring their love for color and their love for pattern and texture outdoors, because we definitely need more plants and more gardeners.
Definitely. I agree wholeheartedly. Jana, why don't you take us home with this question?
Sure. So my book focuses on gardens in the Mid-Atlantic. So it really it is a guide to gardens in New York State, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware. But it's really not limited to gardeners. It's really for anyone who loves to travel and to visit beautiful spaces. Also, many of these gardens really go beyond just plants. Many of them have art. Many of them have interesting historic homes. Some are Gilded Age estates. Some have a fascinating history. So it's really for anyone who enjoys history, who enjoys art, who enjoys horticulture, nature, native plants, and all of that.
Wonderful, thank you. I'm thinking that it might be interesting if you all told us about one interesting thing that you learned when you wrote this book. And Ellen, if you could start us off with that.
I learned so much. I think I learned more writing this book than I knew before I started. I mean, it was a learning experience, and I hope it turns into a teaching experience. But here's just one example. Okay, so everybody knows mugwort. We consider it a pretty aggressive weed. Its Latin name is Artemisia vulgaris, and it was named for Artemis, who was the virgin goddess of the hunt. But she was also the goddess of childbirth. And recent studies by the National Institutes of Health have shown that leaf extracts of mugwort have an estrogenic effect to regulate a woman's cycle, which is essential for conception and therefore childbirth. How the hell the ancient Greeks knew that, I do not know. But every time I would find some, peer-reviewed scientific research that proved that some of their ideas about these plants were right, I was like, you go. I just found that very exciting.
It is exciting. It
Yeah.
is. Yeah. Teresa, tell us one thing that you learned while writing your book.
Well, one of the consistent themes across all 20 gardens, small and large, was just the joy that this maximalist style brings. When you have this abundance in your garden and all of the wildlife that it attracts, it's just incredible the joy that spills over, whether to your neighbors and your community and all of the people that get to enjoy it. I loved this couple in Tucson that created this birding paradise. And each night they would sit on their patio and watch all of the wildlife at dusk, and the hummingbirds, especially. They would just buzz about and throughout all of their dozens and dozens of salvia. So it was just very joyful.
Good, thank you. Jana?
Well, I love digging into the history of many of the gardens, all of the gardens really that are profiled in my book. And a friend of mine introduced me to Gray Towers National Historic Site in Pennsylvania. I had never even heard of it. And there I learned about the Pinchot family that really had a great impact on environmental conservation in the early 1900s. The man who built the mansion, James Pinchot, he was really alarmed by destructive logging practices of his day. So he established one of the first forestry programs in the US on his own property. And then he encouraged his son Gifford to study forestry abroad. And Gifford became the first chief of the U.S. Forest Service under Teddy Roosevelt. And he helped to create more than 110 national forests across the U.S. So that was just one of the little historic nuggets that I was able to, that really interested me as I researched my properties.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. My next question is, I know you're all speakers in addition to being writers. So when you're speaking, what's the most common question that you hear from members of your audience, and how do you answer it? And let's start that off with Teresa.
Well, with my book, the main question that I get is, what is maximalism? And I generally try and answer that right up front for people. It really is about the more is more mentality, where instead of paring down, you're really leaning in and It's all about the colors and the layers and the whole opposite of minimalism. So it also has some interesting ties to historic culture. And throughout history, there have been maximalist movements with the Victorian eras and the Baroque eras. But lately, we're seeing a comeback in maximalism, and it's less about luxury and status and more about personal expression. So we're excited about this whole maximalism movement and how it's playing out in the gardens.
Thank you. Jana, what's the question that you most commonly hear and how do you answer that?
Well, at every talk that I give, someone asks me, what's your favorite garden? And it's kind of like naming your favorite child. You hate to do that. Although, of course, some do come close. But I guess since I was a graphic designer and I went to art school, I really do appreciate gardens that have a strong sense of design. And I really think that all types of gardens, from really small, off the beaten path ones to large botanical gardens, can be sources of inspiration as well as education. You can discover new plants, plant combinations, cultivation techniques, and design ideas in virtually every garden, and then bring them home and adapt them to your own landscape.
Very good. Very cool. Let's see who's next. Ryan.
The question that I get asked most frequently because of the work I do with our brands is how do I get my hydrangea to bloom? And I don't have the time in this very moment to answer that question. But if you've got hydrangea questions, we can talk about it in the breakout. But I think the other big thing that people ask a lot about, especially as it relates to the book, is really trying to understand how they can describe their style. And that's really what this book intended to do, was help people sort of sort out where maybe they start and building these archetypes. So the book has 3 archetypes of design style in it. And you might say, I am all Martha, which you might guess who that's named after. You might say, I'm all Kelly, but maybe there's a blend of the two. And so helping people navigate through that and understand how you build these textures together, how you do plant pairings, which plants might even be a right fit for your landscape because you might not understand how light works in the garden. All those things have been really fun to navigate with people. And it's been fun to have people come to talks and say, I'm all Kelly, and then understand what that means to them, which is really fun.
Oh, that's very good. Ellen, what do you hear and how do you answer it?
I don't really have a single question since I speak on a bunch of different topics, but if I'm talking about wild edible plants, most often people want to know how to identify them safely because most people do not want to kill their entire family by feeding them, poison hemlock. Most people. If I'm talking about mythic plants, the question that comes up fairly often is, why are there so many different versions of these stories? Because, we all grew up hearing just the straight ahead mythology. But once you get into it, you realize that every city, every town had their own version of the story. And the reason is because they made it fit their needs. If they had a question that their people needed answered, they tweaked that myth to have it answer that question. So you'll find myths that sound familiar, but have details that are a little bit different depending on what part of the world they came from.
Very cool. Yeah. Well, I think it's time to give away another book. And Jana, we're going to give away a copy of your book. You want to hold that up? And Diane, you can announce the winner and remind people how to let you know how to get that book.
Yes. So again, if I announce your name, please send me your mailing address. And the person winning Jana's book is Susan Gillette. Susan Gillette, please message me your mailing address and I'll get that to Jana.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay. Oh, I like this question very much. This is a question about what plant or product would you recommend to our audience today that you think every gardener should try? And we're going to start off with you, Jana.
Oh, well, I'll tell you about my favorite gardening tool. This is a soil knife from A.M. Leonard that I have used for over 20 years, and I really wouldn't be without it. I've tried different brands, but this is definitely my favorite. I use it basically every time I'm in the garden for a wide variety of tasks, from planting. It has a little engraved measuring guide for soil depth. It has a serrated edge for cutting open potting bags of potting soil or dividing tough perennials. It's got a notch for cutting twine and a bright orange handle so I don't lose it in the garden. So it really has everything all wrapped up in a great tool.
Bottle opener?
I
Just kidding.
probably
Just
use
kidding.
one of those. Yeah.
Okay, Ryan, what plant or product would you recommend to people?
Oh, this is like the hardest question of all time because it's like choosing your favorite child when you're talking about plants. There are so many, but it's so personal and where you live and all the things that impact it. So I won't give a plant in this very moment. What I will share is a product that I met through GardenCom a number of years ago. In the neighborhood we live in now, we're surrounded by trees and woods, and so we have voracious squirrels. And I really wanted to plant some bulbs. And so I got Plant Skid, which is wonderful. They've got some different formulations, but it is the one thing that has worked so that the squirrels don't dig up the bulbs. So I love it. I swear by it. It's worked incredibly, incredibly well. And I watch those squirrels in the yard and in the pots, and they steer clear. So I love it. It's great.
My favorite rabbit repellent too, Ryan. Right. Ellen, what product or plant do you think every gardener should try?
First, I want to say that, Ryan, I remembered to put Plant Skid in the chat. I said I'd do that yesterday, and I was sure I'd forget, but I remembered. Woohoo! Like Ryan, I'm not going to recommend I hesitate to recommend one plant because there's so many different regions represented here. So I've chosen an annual, and you might wonder why I've chosen lettuce. It's just a mere salad green, but in ancient Greece, it was planted in these shallow containers at midsummer and brought up to the roofs of Athens. And it was used to celebrate and commemorate the death of Adonis, who was Aphrodite's lover. And lettuce had a lot of associations with, excuse me for saying, sex. It was believed to improve the fertility of women. But be careful, because for men, it was considered to be the anti-Viagra. Not something that men were encouraged to eat. Women were like, yes, I'm going to eat lettuce. I'm going to have more babies. Men were like, keep that lettuce away from me or you're getting nothing tonight.
That's very funny. All right, Teresa.
Oh, well, leaning into the whole maximalist theme, I think seeds are one of the best ways to max out a space. They're economical and there's so much variety. And when it comes to seeds, probably my favorite seeds are zinnia seeds. They're the first seeds I planted outside my bedroom window when I was a kid. And so they've always brought me a lot of joy. I love the variety of them. They have the little tiny Lilliput ones to the giant Benaries. They come in two-tone colors. They come in muted Queenie series colors. There's so much variety. And they're a workhorse in the garden. They provide a lot of nectar for insects and pollinators. They also are great cut flowers because, the more that you cut them, the more they bloom. So they're a great choice.
One of my favorites too. All right. What is a gardening takeaway that people will get from your book? Let's start off that question with Ryan.
I think from my book, one of the biggest things is really how to pick plants and create a design that is really personal, and being able to make decisions on what you want in your garden, not just what you see in other people's gardens. Take those elements that you really love, but then sometimes there's that gap between seeing that really beautiful picture in a book like ours or in a magazine, and then understanding how to replicate that in your space based on your soil, your light, your climate, your rain. And so being able to go through the different elements of the book where it talks about those design pieces, and then understanding how these different archetypes might apply those based on what your style is. And then at the end, there's a bunch of recipe cards that break it out by region and sun exposure and all of the things so that you can start to put some of those pieces together so that when you go out into the real world and you go shopping at the garden center, you have a little bit more knowledge to help pull those pieces together.
Thank you. Ellen, how would you answer this question?
Well, mine is a book about plants. It's not a book about gardening. So there's not one specific takeaway, although I do give you cultural information on how to grow most of these plants. There are a couple that are completely mythological, so I can't tell you how to grow those, but you will find cultural information. But really, it's all about the stories. You might think a rose is just a pretty plant, but it's not. It's so much more than that. Aphrodite used rose oil to heal Hector, to protect him. He was one of her favorites on the Trojan side of the Trojan War. So every single one of these plants has a really wonderful story. Although I did just think of one thing. If somebody who reads this book decides they want to plant a completely mythological garden, please contact me because I'm coming over to your house because I really want to see it. So if you want to use it as a guidebook for designing your garden, I am your gal.
That sounds good. A good offer. Teresa.
I think in designing maximalist style gardens, I think people get concerned when you start collecting all of these plants and how do you keep it from becoming a hodgepodge of plants to more of a curated collection. And many of the maximalist gardeners in the book were just pros when it came to curating collections. And one of my favorites was this San Francisco patio that was filled with 300 different pots. And it was a small space, but it was beautifully curated by Clark de Mornay. And his trick was to cluster like plants together. So the cacti and succulents would be over in the sunny corner, and then he'd have the bromeliads and tillandsia under the shade of the palms. And then he'd bring it all together with this earth tone color palette for all of the pots. So it brought some continuity to the whole collection. And then he masterfully layered them. He would stagger different heights. He would upturn pots and place another pot on them and use bricks to elevate some, cluster some on a tabletop, even line a wall with a few. So he was a real master at curating a collection.
Thank you. Jana, what is one gardening takeaway that people will get from your book?
Well, I know that when I was researching the gardens that I described in my book, I was really struck by the importance of gardens to our lives. And, I talk in my book about gardens that are 250 years old, like Bartram's Garden in Philadelphia, all the way to like a place like Delaware Botanic Garden, which was just founded in 2019. And so all through history, gardens have really played a very important role. And America's founding fathers really saw crops and agriculture as the key to making America its independent country. And then 250 years later, gardening really continues to play a key role in feeding us, cleaning our air, and adding beauty to our lives. So new public gardens continue to be created every year because they're an important element in our lives.
Absolutely. Well, this is the last question before we go to breakout rooms. And the question is, tell us about your biggest gardening goof. What's your biggest fail? And what did you learn from it? And we're going to start with Ellen.
My biggest goof had nothing to do with mythology or edible wild plants. When I first started my business in New York, I was doing a garden for a friend. And I never took on clients if they didn't have drip irrigation because that was just a a deal breaker for me. But because she was a friend, I said I would. And I knew she wasn't going to water well. So I added those water retaining polymers to the soil in her window box. And it was the first time I'd ever used them, and I did not pre moisten the soil. So I planted the box. It looked great. I watered it. And the next day I got a call, and she was French. And she said, Hélène, all the plants, they have been vomited out of the box. And I couldn't imagine what had happened. And I went to her house, and it did look like the container had just kind of puked up all of the plants because those polymers had absorbed the moisture. The volume had increased incredibly. I felt like an idiot, and I never made that mistake again. So that was it. Water your polymers in advance.
Absolutely. You've been warned, people.
Yeah.
Teresa.
Oh, Ellen, she is a great storyteller. I love that. So I make goofs daily, and when I talk to beginners, I tell them when you plant a garden, you're going to encounter goofs. And that's part of the fun of it, is just the learning. And then when you have those successes, it's a lot of fun because you figured it out. But it's no big deal to have goofs. And one of my earliest goofs was with morning glories. And I thought, gee, I'm going to plant some seeds and they're going to look so beautiful along the fence. But then the next year they came up all over the garden, and I didn't realize that they would be taking over. And so I learned the next year to cut them back before they go to seed. And I learned how to identify the little seedlings so I could rip them out where I didn't want them. And so I learned some good lessons that transferred to lots of other gardening things. So I'm still making goofs today and still learning. It's all right.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Jana.
Well, I think like every other gardener, everyone makes a lot of mistakes, and that's how you learn. Um, so there have been many instances, but one of my big regrets was I decided to put in a very long shrub and tree border to divide my property from my neighbors. And instead of taking up all the lawn, I just dug individual holes, planted my plants, and then I decided to use landscape fabric or all around the plants with mulch on top. Well, I don't know if any of you have done that, but and those trees and shrubs, some of them didn't do so well. And so several years later, I was digging them out, and I noticed that underneath that landscape fabric, that soil looked awful. It was all compacted. It just didn't even smell good, and it just wasn't getting the air. It wasn't getting the movement that earthworms and other insects create. So then having to take out all of this landscape fabric from underneath several layers of mulch was just a small nightmare, but it was a good lesson learned.
Absolutely. Ryan.
Well, Jana, I could say copy and repeat because when we moved into this house, we had our housewarming like the next weekend. And I was like, I'm just going to quick put some plants in the ground. We discovered that the former homeowner was a bit of a plant hoarder, and the person that flipped the house just put some dirt over it. That's where they had their dry riverbed. So it was all rock that I was going into. And then we just put some mulch down. So that was a problem. But I think the things that I've learned is one, we can kill a lot of plants, and that's okay. We learn from it. I also think that I can make plants work where they're not really supposed to. I just think that, okay, I know that's supposed to be full sun, but I'm going to make this one work in shade. That's not true. Sometimes we get lucky, or it can work for a season. But thinking that that is the right way to do it. And then Teresa, everything that I do is over the top and maximalist. And so I also am maybe a little impatient. And so I tend to overplant because I want that instant gratification. And so I have learned editing over the years and having patience, which I think of any hobby or job in the world, gardening teaches all of us to be patient. So that has been something that I have learned over the last 10 years, is that it's okay to have some space in between plants because they will fill in.
Very good. Thank you. Well, I think everybody who is in the room with us here right now can relate because we all make mistakes. And I often tell my audiences that nature makes mistakes all the time. Mother Nature plants things in the wrong place all the time. And Mother Nature kills plants all the time. So, we are just the same, just the same. All right, we're now going to go to breakout rooms. All right, I think we are back. And Diane, do you want to announce the final books to give away?
I would love to. So let's see here. We have Teresa and Ellen's books left to give away. And so this one, let's see here. Bernita Zhang. Hopefully she's still on. I can look here. Yes, she is. Bernita Zhang, you are the winner. Did I already say which one? I don't want to get.
No.
Okay. Okay, Ellen's is up. Mythic Plants. Bernita, you get Ellen's book. Okay, that's one. So, Bernita, please message me your mailing address, your shipping address. And then Teresa's book, Garden to the Max. That is Dan Chernitsky. Is Dan still on the call? Let's check and make sure. So otherwise we'll have to draw another name. There he is. Okay. So Dan, please message me your shipping address for Teresa's book. So congratulations.
Congratulations. And, you can Google the name of all of our authors here, and you can get to their website and find out more about them and their books. So don't hesitate, certainly, to do that. I think, Shelley, you are going to do a little wrap up for us here, you and Diane, yes?
Yes, I don't know about all of you, but I'm more excited than ever to get out there and garden. So thank you, huge thank you to our authors for sharing their time today. And I hope you all will go running to your computers, your Amazon accounts, or what have you, and order these books. They're great, great. And we're just grateful to have our authors here with us tonight. And our podcaster, radio host, CL, has been phenomenal tonight. And I forgot to tell you in the beginning, in case you didn't know, she's also president of Garden Com. I'm just here as a director, but she is actually leader of the whole organization. And you can see why. She has a very commanding and wonderful presence, and we're very grateful for her leadership in the industry. So many things come from Garden Com. I hope you've enjoyed it tonight, and many different backgrounds and aspects. And to learn more about us, again, our website is gardencom.org. And we look forward to seeing you again.
Wonderful. Diane, give us a little wrap up from the National Garden Bureau point of view.
Well, I'm not sure what else I can say, but it's been a phenomenal night. The authors are very interesting. CL, you did a wonderful job for us. I noticed the authors are putting in some of their contact information. I put a link to the NGB books page where everybody has their books listed. So yes, I think it was a very fun evening, and I want to thank everybody.
Wonderful. Now, I want everybody to know that previous book parties are on the National Garden Bureau YouTube channel. So you can go to YouTube and search in, the National Garden Bureau channel, and you will find it. And there are previous garden parties there. So I want you to check those out. And you all can have some inside information here. Save the date. November 13th is going to be the fall book party. So you're on the inside track, and I hope that you will all join us again in the fall.